Traveller's Guide to the Forgotten Realms, Episode 2, Tresendar Manor, Phandalin, off the Tribor Trail, Northern Sword Coast. My dear Lord Sandrier, my most humble apologies for the lateness of my latest log. I'm afraid I have been waylaid and unable to work. Please allow me to explain. In my last log, I explained that the village of Phandalin has recently become home to a violent outfit of thugs, masquerading as a mercenary guild. A few days after I sent my last message to you, I set out from the Stonehill Inn to investigate the curiosity that is the ruined Tresendar Manor. I walked through the hustle and bustle of mid-morning Phandalin, greeting the charming Sister Goral tending to her little shrine of Timora, walked past the Townmaster's Hall, and climbed the hill toward the old manor. It is a large, dilapidated manor house cum castle that once served as the seat of the royal Tresendar family, rulers of a long-since lost petty kingdom that effectively encompassed the region between Leyland and Tribor, a small but important area. The manor is set on a rise about 30 feet above the rest of the town, and is mostly choked by weeds and first, second and third growth trees now, as they reclaim the hilltop. Approaching the ruins of the manor is actually a challenge due to the new growth, but up close, it's apparent that it was once a truly beautiful building. Most of the stonework somehow remains intact, suggesting dwarven masonry. No other work like this would normally survive so long, especially in these mountains, and being so far north. The foundations, frame of the ground floor, and 3 huge chimney stacks are all that really remain whole, with the roof and top 2 floors mostly having collapsed. Picking my way around the area, having to stamp down the undergrowth, I found beautifully crafted slates from the rooftop and occasionally recognisable pieces of wood, usually carvings from the walls. It must have been a truly impressive structure in its heyday, probably around 3,000 to 4,000 square feet per floor across 3 levels, plus whatever there might have been in the basement. I found a fallen gargoyle waterspout on the floor, glaring sadly up at me, a sad metaphor for the state of such a once lovely place. The manor almost begs for someone to come along and restore it, though such an effort would probably cost us several tens of thousands of golds. I was about to abandon my investigation when I came to the back of the building and found it curiously clear of weeds and growth. There, next to the ruins of a kitchen, there is now a staircase, mostly complete, leading down to a cellar door that has been cleared of debris, and is clearly well trafficked. I was about to descend the stairs when a voice startled me. From the trees to the south emerged the halfling boy, Carp Alderleaf, his face painted green and wearing filthy leathers. He beckoned me over and told me that he'd seen the bad men with red cloaks coming and going from the ruins for more than a 10-day through some kind of secret entrance at the bottom of the hill. He led me down the southern face of the hill and into a dense stand of second or third growth conifers to a large tunnel carved straight out of the bedrock and partially covered with a heavy, corroded metal grate which had been bent and pried back. For some reason I cannot fathom now, I put my head inside the tunnel and listened, hearing nothing but a distant tapping. Then, even more to my surprise, I went inside. The tunnel had smooth-laid flagstones in the same white stone as all the other buildings in town, and sloped up gently. It was very dry and cool. After around 100 feet of winding back and forth, it opened up suddenly into a large cavern that could only be the basement level of the manor. Overhead, however, was a jumble of fallen wood and structural stone that had collapsed over the centuries. The cause of the collapse was now obvious, as I cowered in the mouth of the tunnel. A 20-foot deep chasm had been rent in the floor of the basement, tearing open more than 15 feet wide in some places. To the north of the rent was another barely visible, mostly collapsed tunnel running deeper into the earth. It was all surprisingly well lit, I found, so that I could clearly make out burning torches and sconces, and I realised that some parts of the basement had survived the collapse. I edged out into the silence, amazed at how, even disastrously damaged, dwarven architecture managed to keep the environment dry and pleasant. 2 haphazard bridges had been built over the chasm in the middle of the space, the original purpose of which was impossible to determine due to the collapse. The bridges looked shabby at best and dangerous at worst. Either side of the chasm were corridors, and at the far end of the space was some kind of storeroom. The strangest thing, though, was the faint creeping cold that emanated from the chasm in the middle of the room. It wasn't a deep or shiver-inducing cold, but a kind of faint chill, the kind of thing you'd never even notice unless you were standing still and paying attention. And I think I heard something down there, something muttering to itself, something unnatural, something that made the hairs on my neck and arms raise up. That's when I heard the voices, several loud voices speaking Jondathan, the words made unintelligible by the acoustics of the chambers, but there were others there that were unmistakably the goblin tongue. Not a language that I speak myself, but one I've heard before, deep and rough. The voice was resonant, so definitely not one of the smaller species of their kind. I turned and beat a hasty retreat down the tunnel and back out into the fresh air. Back outside, a light drizzle had started, and I wound my way back out of the stand of trees. As I ducked out into the open air, I ran face to face into 3 red brands, sneering and weaving side to side, drunk. I tried to pass off my presence in the area as an academic studying trees, but they set about me, stole my purse, notebooks, broke my favourite walking stick, and left me unconscious in the dirt. I awoke 3 days later to find myself bruised and bandaged, my right arm in a splint, and a significant bill provided me by Sister Gorel. She reported that she'd fixed my broken nose, and that if I wanted to pay more, she could fully heal me, or I could let nature take its course. As I am yet to receive my first payment from you, my Lord Sandre, I had only the latter option. I reported my beatings at the hands of the Red Brands to the townmaster, Harbin Wester, who simply replied that I shouldn't have been trespassing, and declared that nothing would be done. I have since spent a 10-day recovering from the comfort of a high-backed chair in the main room of the tavern. It turns out that Darren Edomath, the orchard keeper and retired agent for the Order of the Gauntlet, knows a lot about the history of this region. Phandalin was last a place of note back in the late 10th century DR. Back then, it was a major farming location for the region, and a member of something called the Phandelver's Pact. The Pact was an alliance of humans, gnomes and dwarfs of the Sword's Edge Mountains that cooperated to harness a particularly strong nexus of magical energy into something called the Forge of Spells. Both Phandalin, the rest of the Pact, and the location of the Forge of Spells was lost during an orc invasion in 951 DR, the year of the Empty Hourglass. At that time, part of the Sword's Edge Mountains and the surrounding regions were an independent orc realm named for the clan that called it home, which was in turn named for its founder, Urth Ukript. In 951, the tribe was led by its then king, possibly called Rarach, down from the mountains to ravage, plunder and expand. It destroyed the keeps, holds and towns of the Pact. Since then, the location of the Forge of Spells has been lost. As I say, Old Phandalin was a major farming centre, supplying significant amounts of food to the surrounding regions, much like Goldenfields does today to the east. At that time, however, the region was ruled over by the royal Tresendar family from Phandalin, and their seat of Tresendar Manor. The orcs destroyed everything in their path, but apparently struggled with Phandalin and the Wave Echo Cave, the home of the Forge of Spells. They employed mercenary wizards to undermine defensive efforts, including tunnelling under Tresendar Manor, where the last king, Aldith Tresendar, a knight of great renown, also known as a Black Hawk, died trying to save his home and people. Tresendar possessed a famous magical longsword called Talon that has never been found since. It is unknown whether there were any Tresendars that survived, perhaps something worth looking into for the curious. Should a descendant be found, someone with the will and strength who could prove their heritage in some way could reclaim the manor, and maybe even restore it and Phandalin to their former glories. Urth Ukript was, as I said, a major threat to the region of its day. It was formed following an orc shaman prophesying that the Sword's Edge Mountains would be cloaked by red clouds. When this came true, rivers of blood flowed down the mountains for 3 days, spreading plagues and causing the deaths of all the minor orc chieftains in the region. Following this, the shaman, called Wund, founded the Brotherhood of the Scarlet Scourge, which crowned Urth Ukript himself as the first king and ruler of all the now unified, disenfranchised tribes. Urth met his end in an attempt to destroy Nymore's Hold, which would later become Waterdeep. But it took until 1026 DR for the Orc realm to be destroyed, a loss from which it, thankfully, never recovered. Much more of this subject will be explored when we arrive at Waterdeep, whenever that might be. So, my lord, I find myself in an unexpectedly interesting part of the world. I've also learned that there is an old Netherese outpost nearby, a place with a long and storied history that I might have to check in on before I head to Waterdeep, called Old Owl Well. I'm well recovered from my run-in with the ruffians now, and have organised to travel east a ways, with a troop of dwarf miners heading back to their hold tomorrow. And I've rediscovered an almost lost part of the history of this part of the world. Another forgotten realm, if you will. I suspect that things cannot remain the same here in Phandalin for long. The townmaster's dithering in dealing with the Redbrands simply cannot go on. I complete this letter and send it post-haste, carried by a rider who is headed to Waterdeep. The lack of a temple with the ability to send messages from here is frustrating in the extreme. Perhaps it is something I ought to learn for myself. I hope that my next letter might bring you better news, my lord. I remain your humble servant, Falrien. There is always another dawn. Justice and good above all. My good lord, please remember to visit the trade house Etsy and examine the wares of Bindwood Gaming. Tell her Law Lounge sent you for a 10% discount. She makes all manner of geeky accessories including coasters, notebooks, flasks, and I'm reliably informed that dice are coming soon too. PPS. I've also taken to crafting character backstories and personal histories for hire. After a reasonable amount of peer pressure, I've signed up to Fiverr, where you can hire me to create your character, NPC, or even whole organisation and town. If you're stuck for ideas, the link is to be found below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. Please check out my Fiverr if you're interested, but any support you can offer me or my channel would be hugely appreciated. You're all truly wonderful. Hail to Chauntea the Great Mother, and I'll see you all soon. This is Thomas, from the Law Lounge.